What if?
Let me assert my firm belief
What if?
that the only thing we have to fear is
We looked at things
fear itself.
differently.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Differently. Differently? Differently. What if?
Let me assert my firm belief
What if?
that the only thing we have to fear is
We looked at things
fear itself.
differently.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Differently. Differently? Differently. Hello! You are listening to That's Life, stories and lessons that might make you think differently. I'm Heather, and today's topic is bullying. And I want to quickly get into why I chose this topic and felt like we needed a new perspective on it. It breaks my heart to hear the horrific stories of bullying happening in our schools. And I read a statistic in preparation for this. Any of these statistics that I share today or any of the information I share today comes from a site, stopbullying.gov. If you're interested in reading more about this, you can visit that website. But 1 in 4 kids say that they have been bullied in school. 1 in 4. And we hear these stories of kids who are victims of incessant bullying taking drastic measures, whether that's dropping out of school, moving towns, or, in the very worst case, we hear stories of kids committing suicide and attributing that to the difficulties they were having with bullying. And that's not okay. And then we hear the stories of hope. We hear the stories of peers who are standing up and saying, that's not okay. It's not okay to treat other people this way. I'm a big believer. It only takes a spark to start a fire. And so I think that the more we hear about doing good, the more we talk about this, the more we shed light on and express how we can be better, the less people will think it's cool to pick on other people. So I want to change the perception altogether. I think that that's how we solve this problem. That's how we stop the prevalence of this in our school system, is by talking about it. And anyone who out there who's listening, who's a parent, an educator, works with kids, anything, this is for you, because we all play a role in it. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about this topic. In fact, just to share with you real quick, this is one of the reasons why I was drawn to start teaching yoga and mindfulness to kids in particular. And what I felt was that kids at a young age, starting at a young age, we had an opportunity to impact how they thought of themselves. And to start building up that confidence to really embrace those unique qualities and characteristics. And when they hear the phrase, you're different, they would never take that as a negative thing. They would say, oh yeah, like I am different. That's awesome. And that through the yoga practice, through this mindfulness practice and working with kids, that's really one of the core lessons that we try to share is having that confidence in yourself and knowing that everyone's different, but that's a beautiful thing. And then second to that is also being in tune with your feelings to know, hey, that didn't make me feel good. And to say something about it, to be able to stand up for yourself. In reading, again, in preparation for this, it was saying that, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, that bullies tend to target a vulnerable person. So someone that they perceive as being different, and also someone who won't stand up for themselves. And so, again, I'm just very passionate about working with our kids and teaching them to stand up for themselves in a healthy way by expressing their emotions and how things make them feel and getting in touch with that, so that at any time if a person does come up and start picking on them and saying, you're different for this reason, they can first of all say, well, yeah, I am. Thank you for noticing. And I actually enjoy that part and am confident and comfortable about that part of me. And then two, just to stand up and say, like, I don't like what you're saying to me right now. I don't like what you're doing. So it's easier for me now to express my disdain for bullying and for treating people in this way, and especially when it comes to kids. But looking back, I actually realized I've been on both sides of this. And so remembering that this is a tree of trust, we're in a judgment-free zone here. So for those of you that maybe just thought or said to yourself, oh my gosh, who is this person? She's a bully. Just stick with me here. Going back to the information that I have from that stopbullying.gov, there are different types of bullying. So let me just read them off to you. Name calling, teasing, spreading rumors or lies, pushing or shoving, hitting, slapping or kicking, leaving out, threatening, stealing belongings, sexual comments or gestures, and then, of course, in the cyberbullying realm, the email or blogging. All of those are classified as forms of bullying. I just want to share a couple personal experiences, just to kind of expose myself, expose my warts a little bit, and hopefully get you thinking about your own experiences as well, to open your minds to these conversations. And this in no way is to rehash any horrible memories that you've been able to forgive and forget or anything like that. Again, it's just to open our minds to the conversation. So I recognized in thinking about this that when I was growing up, I was picked on a little bit, and not in such a horrible way that I dropped out of school, but I do recall days when I didn't want to go to school, and not because I didn't do my homework or anything like that, but it was just really because I didn't want to face some of the kids. So my family, I would say that we were middle class, but I wasn't getting new clothes very often. We couldn't afford, the very fashionable brands or the limited twos and buckles or anything like that. And I did wear the same clothes over and over again on a weekly basis. And so when I was thinking about this, I was recalling those times in school when I got picked on. Again, people find those openings, those windows of vulnerability to tease about. And that was one of them for me, was that I wore the same clothes over and over again. And so when I thought about that, and I was thinking, it's fine now, I can smile about it, and it doesn't bother me now, of course. But it obviously bothered me enough that I remembered it. And when I started thinking about it, I was kind of feeling sorry for that younger version of me. So that was my example of what I would say being picked on or being bullied a little bit there. Again, not an extreme case, but one that had an impact on me. And then on the other side, and I'm certainly not proud of this, I have to say, several years ago, I had that moment similar to in Billy Madison when he goes back to school and becomes the kid that is getting picked on. And so he creates that list of all the kids that he picked on when he was going through school the first time around. And he starts calling people up and apologizing. Several years ago, I had that moment myself. Not that it was an exhaustive list or long list or anything like that, but I was just thinking, wow, I really want to get in touch with these people and say, I'm so sorry for saying those things to you. And really, it was not because I disliked the people. It wasn't, I had nothing against them. I really didn't even feel strongly about the things I said or teased them about or anything. It was truly just to fit in. And that doesn't make it any better. But but I recognized that I was a party to teasing people and to probably some nights where they went home and cried, and maybe some mornings when they told their parents too that they didn't feel like going to school because they didn't want to have to deal with it. So I wanted to bring in a young lady whose opinion I really value and have a conversation with her about bullying and see what she had to say. So, check out our conversation. How old are you?
I am 10 years old.
How would you define bullying?
Okay, bullying is when someone is constantly hurting someone, like mentally or physically.
Have you ever experienced bullying?
No, I have not, ever been bullied.
Do you know anyone or have you seen anyone being bullied before?
I've never seen anyone or know someone being bullied. I'm actually kind of glad I've never seen that happen because it just breaks my heart that they have been being bullied. And
If you saw someone being bullied, do you think that you would do anything or say anything?
well, probably at first, honestly, I'd probably kind of stay back. It'd just be a weird, like I'd probably stay back. I wouldn't say anything to them yet. I'd just go get an adult.
Why do you think people bully other people?
Um, I think people bully people to release stress and to feel good about doing it. Like maybe they're going through rough times and putting that on other people maybe just somehow thinks makes them feel better. I don't get how people would feel good about being bad to someone. To me, if I made someone feel bad and I didn't mean to do, I feel really bad and I'd like apologize.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think would help people to not bully others anymore?
I think we could do maybe like a kind of social experiment at some point, and the people that are bullying people, we could try and like bully them back and say mean things about them, and then when we're done, we can just like say, "Oh, this was a experiment, and why do you think it's good to bully people?" and just make them try and not bully people, and why they don't want to bully people, because it just makes the people that are getting bullied feel really bad because they don't have the courage to speak up for themselves.
So what would you say right now to encourage someone, whether they're, whether they're 10 or if they're 35, what would you say to someone just to encourage them?
I'd say to maybe, if this was in like younger area, like in school, I'd say to tell a teacher and talk with the bully or bullies and just ask why they were bullying in the first place. And we
Mm-hmm.
could also do that like a 35-year-old. We could do that the same exact thing, but maybe like don't tell another adult. Just try and talk it out with the bullies.
What about to someone who is maybe listening and maybe they all of a sudden just had that realization that like, oh yeah, like
They aren't
maybe
being the nicest.
yeah, maybe I'm not being the nicest. Maybe I'm kind of picking on people. What would you say to them?
I really don't. I really didn't go like hard on words here. Kind of just made it simple. So I said, tell the person who was the bully, but knew it was wrong. That why did you start bullying? So why
Like,
did you start bullying? Like, did you have did you have a rough time at some point and just wanted to start bullying? And
mhm.
maybe that rough time like passed or something, and now they knew it wasn't right.
Just given this topic and now that you've put some thought into it, what's one thing that you might do differently?
Probably maybe change how I approach when I see someone being bullied. I'd probably go up to them straight away and be like, "Hey, back off! Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not right," and making someone feel bad. Like, like in my perspective, that is not like that is off the charts for me. Like, especially with an autistic brother, I will never do that in my life.
Well, thank you so much for your insight on this topic. I really appreciate it.
Yup, anytime, anytime.
So there you have it, lessons from a 10-year-old. I love the part about the social experiment. that that had me cracking up. Although I have to say, I don't know that we should go that route if we're playing by the whole golden rule principle here, but we'll see. One of the new perspectives, though, that I want to touch on here, and again, when I was thinking about this topic of bullying and really wanting to share information about it and shed some light on this, I started thinking it doesn't just apply to kids. And we hear about bullying being a topic and being an issue in schools, and we're concerned about our youth, obviously. But here's the question I want to ask. As adults, do we do it too? And I really want to consider this, and I want to hear from all of you on this, because what I was thinking was yes, sadly, yes. And I'm not talking about this, we don't see a lot of physical bullying, but we do see verbal, especially when we look at online. When we look at, I don't want to take it too far here, but when we look at how we talk to each other on social media and responses, there are some very harsh threats that are sometimes made through these platforms. And then I started thinking, and I want you to think about this for a minute. Does not including others, or is not including others, a form of bullying? So I've really been thinking about this, and I thought, yes, it's a very mild form of bullying if we had like the spectrum of bullying. But I think yes, and it really was not something I considered until recently. And I was thinking that how, as adults, we have our groups. We do. We have our groups of people and of friends, and we're not always inclusive of outsiders. Or another way to say outsiders is that You're different from me. Now, when I say it like that, doesn't that sound very familiar to those kids in school? You're different. You look different. You believe different things. You don't wear the same types of clothes I do. You aren't interested in the same things as me. You're skinny. You're fat. You're fill in the blank. It's anyone who's different from you. As adults, it's not like we're going out of our way to cut those individuals down. But by not including, how does that show up as a form of bullying? Let me talk hypothetically here. You see a kid being dropped off, first day of school. There's a group of kids, his or her same age, playing nearby. They're all together. They're having a good time. This kid is new to the school. They're all alone. And nobody from that group of kids thinks to invite this one over. And instead, they end up going off by themselves. Now, when I think about that hypothetical example, immediately I just get sad. I get so sad for that kid. And I think that if I were there as an adult, I would immediately be drawn to that kid to try to engage in conversation and to try to make them feel included as an adult, right? And I'm sure people listening, you've either seen this firsthand or, thinking about it. Of course, we think as adults, of course, if we saw a kid that was being picked on or not included by another group of friends or another group of kids somewhere, of course, we would try to make sure that they engage somehow. And we would feel sorry for them. That's really the phrase, right? We would feel sorry for them. So, apply this to adults. It's as simple as that. What I want to talk about here actually is this idea of radical belonging. So I'm totally stealing this from my church right now. We were talking recently about this idea of radical belonging, and it just spoke volumes to me, truly. But I was also thinking about it in day-to-day life too, in this world of where everybody's trying to navigate their place. And it seems like we have so many different ways that we can segregate ourselves into different groups, to different settings and different social classes, whatever else, that really, though, at the end of the day, we just want to know that we belong anywhere that we show up. And a lot of times what that takes is somebody extending a hand and saying, hey, you belong here. So I want to share a story. It's cute. I volunteer actually with my church and in the working with the kids and the preschoolers. And recently there was a new girl, brand new, doesn't know a single kid, is being left for an hour by her parents, and it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing being in a new room. I mean, there's tons of toys, which is awesome, but you don't know anyone and you're scared. So I was sitting on the floor playing with her, and another girl came up who just has such a spunky spirit. And right away, she came up to me and gave me a hug, but then immediately went over to where this new girl was playing and sat down and just started playing with her and talking with her, introduced herself. Hi, I'm so-and-so. How are you? What are you playing? Can I play with you? Can I sit here? And just for me to see this exchange just filled my heart with so much joy, because that was that idea of radical belonging applied by a 3 and a 4-year-old. And I just loved it so much. So my challenge for all of you in this idea of bullying and thinking about, how it shows up every day in our kids' lives or kids we work with, but also how it shows up in our adult world. My challenge is for all of us to evaluate our actions. How are we giving off a sense of radical belonging? Because sometimes as adults, we tend to complicate things, right? We think about things too much, and really we can learn a lot from kids. And you can guarantee they're learning from us. How are we giving off that sense of radical belonging as adults to where when kids are watching us, they're learning those behaviors too? And they're starting to apply those behaviors. If you have kids or are an educator of some sort or just work with kids a lot, maybe you can even share this idea too, radical belonging. How do you extend a hand to someone new or someone who's different from you? Because it's always easy to look back and say, well, this is what I should have done. But I don't know about you. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be the person who feels this is what I should do or want to do because it's going to make someone else feel good. And then do it right then, in that moment. Because that's life. So what are you going to do differently?